Yes, hello and welcome to this Energy Future Exchange EFEX webinar together with our partners from the Alliance Center and our speaker Dorothee Saar from Deutsche Umwelthilfe. I'm very happy to present you today to this webinar, very close to the holidays, almost the end of the year, and I'm very glad that you all joined us for this webinar. My name is Max Grünig from the Ecologic Institute. We're one of the project partners of the Energy Future Exchange. It's a transatlantic civil society dialogue on the future of energy in the context of climate change. And one of our topics there is sustainable mobility. The webinar also fits very well with our program, the Post-Carbon Cities of Tomorrow. So it has also very strong urban sustainability component. Of course, it's a very, very tightly knit topic. It affects our health. Urban mobility affects our quality of living, and of course, in the global context, climate change and our use of resources on this planet. I'm very happy to have this topic here on today, and of course, we will have time after the presentations for questions and answers. You can either address them via the chat function. You can also raise your hand if you find the button for it, and you can also pose questions. Should none of this work for you, don't worry. You can get the contacts for all of us afterwards and can email us, and we're happy to answer questions afterwards. I'm pretty sure that we can't go into all the details because we only have 1 hour and I already talked quite a bit now. So we will have all the time afterwards. I don't want to take up more time now, so I want to hand over to Isabel from the Alliance Center, who will introduce their work. They're a nonprofit based in Denver in Colorado, and we worked with them already multiple times. We're very happy to work with them again, and they are co-hosting this webinar with us today. So please enjoy. Isabel.
Good morning, everybody. Let me see if I can set up my presentation. I don't know if you guys can see it, but well, kind of. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us this morning. And thank you very much to our partners and co-hosts at the Ecologic Institute. Thank you also to our speakers for their expertise and leadership. We are really excited about the webinar this morning. My name, like Max said, is Isabel Mendoza. I am the Progress Manager here at the Alliance Center. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do here this morning. Our mission is to bring people together to create a sustainable future for all, a future in which our planet is healthy, our economies thrive, our communities are inclusive, and our democracy is strong. We work to bring this big global mission to tangible and measurable impact at the local level by focusing specifically on 3 goals. First, decreasing Colorado greenhouse emissions, growing the corporate social responsibility movement, and growing the sustainability movement in ways that represent the rich diversity of our communities. We are able to advance these goals through our building, our network, and our programs. We're a leader on green building innovation. With an Energy Star score of 96, our building is one of the most energy efficient buildings in Colorado. We're very proud of that. We are a demonstration site open to the public and everybody that is interested in building efficiency. We also advance our goals through our network of 50 mission-aligned organizations housing our building and through strategic collaboration with businesses, government, academia, and grassroots organizations. We also advance our, I'm sorry, I moved something. Can you still see me? Yeah. Okay, sorry. We also advance our goals through our programs. We help businesses measure and improve their environmental and social impact. We educate and create awareness of issues affecting our communities and bring stakeholders together to create solutions to some of the problems we face in our environment, economies, and communities. Um, so with that, I will pass the microphone back to Max. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed your webinar today.
Thank you very much, Isabel, and I thank you also for joining and for working with us on this webinar. I think we all care about the same issues in terms of clean, sustainable cities, livable cities, and also cities with working communities where people enjoy living together. And now I want to introduce and hand over to Dorothee Saar. Dorothee is the sustainable transport expert at the Deutsche Umwelthilfe, the German environment organization that's one of the drivers behind the uproar at the municipal level and the federal level in Germany, and that way hopefully driving also a European-wide transport revolution. It's very amazing. Thank you so much, Dorothee, for joining us today. I hope that you can share some of your experiences, and maybe some of the listeners can copy some of it, or at least see what works in your situation in Germany and how this can maybe be applied to their own home situation. So you should be able to share your slides now as well. And I will just disappear for when you present your slides. Wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you very much, Max, for the kind introduction and for having me with you. Good evening from my side. So I'm joining from Berlin, and as you can see in the background, this is evening here with us. So my topic is to tell you about things we did with regard to legal action in specific, and our goal has been for many years to improve air quality in the cities and to also address climate change. And we call for several years now to more combine those two topics, because we see both climate aspects and air quality aspects have the same sources, and means or measures to improve air quality are also beneficial with regard to climate change. So my topic today is now our work for clean air with regard to legal action. So let me very briefly introduce my organization. This is Deutsche Umwelthilfe Environmental Action Germany, or DOH, and we are a charitable NGO for environmental and consumer protection, founded in 1975. We have about 90 staff members currently and are politically independent. We do not only take care about air quality and transport issues, but also on nature conservancy, energy transition, circular economy, and other things. And yes, not at least we are entitled to take legal action with regard to consumer rights and with regard to environmental legislation. So the transport and air quality challenge in Germany and in Europe is that we see a massive deviation between the real world exhaust emission compared to the standards that we have in the European Union. The standards are not as tough as in the US, but yeah, quite okay, but it's a question of implementation. So we don't have a proper implementation and control how the cars actually, or what the cars actually emit when they're driving on the streets. And until today, we don't see responsible authorities to react effectively, saying or meaning with that, yeah, as I mentioned, there's no proper market surveillance and no control. There are no sanctions in case of illegal activities, such as illegal defeat devices. So this is another difference from the US, where you have quite efficient reaction. And this, together with the thing that diesel cars are very popular in Germany and in various European countries, we see exceedances of the allowed NO2 concentration, nitrogen dioxide concentration, at about 50% of the traffic-based monitoring stations in Germany, and we have similar situations in France, in Italy, in the UK. And that unfortunately leads to severe health damages that we still see in the European Union, despite the efforts that have been done with regard to many sources in the past. So the legal basis for our work is the Air Quality Directive that is binding for every European member state, and that sets a limit value of 40 micrograms per cubic meter in the annual mean. It's an annual average that is relevant there. So we still have also problems with particle emission, even though we comply with the PM10 air quality limits in various countries, not all Eastern European countries, but in Germany, I think we have 2 or 1 spots where we still exceed the PM10 limit value, but we do not properly address ultrafine particles, and this is why we still have high health damages with regard to particle pollution. So this is not accordingly addressed yet. We don't have any mean to measure ultrafine particle in a way that would allow us to also define proper limit values for ambient air quality. So coming back to NO2, one of the reasons that we have such high concentration in so many places in Germany is that, as I mentioned, there's a deviation between the official limit value that has been tested in the laboratory in the course of the type approval compared to the emission we see on the road. So you see the white cloud that expresses the official limit value, and you see the gray cloud that shows to what extent a real-world emission actually are. And so despite the hope that was connected to the introduction of Euro 5 and Euro 6 exhaust standards to reduce the level of air pollution, that did not work because, the cars actually did emit even more than older cars, and as you see if you compare the Euro 5 cloud to the Euro 4 cloud, for example. We still see this problem even with new cars in the Euro 6 standards. There is now a new test procedure being introduced with regard to Euro 6 passenger cars, and we actually hope that this will improve the situation, but we still are aware that even there's an option to cheat within the type approval procedure, and so we still think that proper market surveillance is very necessary. So one thing or one measure that politicians together with the car industry came up to was to say, well, okay, we have several million cars in Germany and in the European Union that are known for using so-called illegal defeat devices that reduces the exhaust cleaning while the cars are on the road. So we will just change the software, and then those cars will work proper again with regard to emission or exhaust emission cleaning. Within our organization, we have founded a so-called Emission Control Institute, and we have the possibility to actually test the exhaust or measure the exhaust emission while the car is driving on the road. So what we did is to compare a car, in this case a Volkswagen model, before the software update. This is the bar you see on the very left side, and then this car was taken to a garage and the software update was implemented. And in the middle, you see the NOx emission after the software. So obviously, this can lead to some improvement that can actually reduce NOx emission, but the specific thing is that the test after the software update was done in quite pleasurable or nice ambient temperature between 12 and 19 degrees Celsius. I'm sorry I don't have that in Fahrenheit, but that's, well, a nice day, so to speak. Not too cold, not too warm. But as we know that a lot of those so-called defeat devices react on the ambient temperature, meaning that the defeat device starts to work and exhaust emission is not being cleaned anymore when it comes to low ambient temperature. We tried or we tested this car again when it was actually cold outside, around 0. And then you could see, this is the right bar, you see, that the emission is even higher than it was before the software update. So our conclusion of this measurement, and this is only one of several examples that we could see, is that this measure alone is not efficient enough to actually lower the NO2 concentration in the ambient air and to be a reliable component of a package of measures that would help us to comply with the air quality limit values. So this is, to make it short, a fake. This map shows you on the right hand, or on the right side with the red dots. This is a map being published by our environmental agency, and the red dots more or less show the cities where you have exceedances of the NO2 limit value from 1917. And on the right hand, this is also a map of Germany, and it lists us, all the cities that we actually have legal cases running. So this picture is not complete. There are still some cities missing, and right now we have 34 cases. It's not the city directly that we take to court, but the official authority which is responsible to set up an air quality plan, or to renew or to advance the existing air quality plan in a way that would ensure the compliance with the limit values as soon as possible. And this is an important context in this whole story, because those limit values are binding since 2010, and we still see the high exceedances, and now the court decisions refer more and more to this little sentence, which is already been expressed in the European umbrella legislation, if you want, which means if a case of exceedances occurs, you have to make sure that compliance is being assured as soon as possible. So some of the measures, like improving public transport, raising the share of electric mobility, improving the situations for cyclists and people who walk, this is all very, very important, but will only lead to an effect with regard to air quality in a mid to long-term perspective. But you also have to consider measures that work on a short-term perspective. To give you an impression, I don't want to run through this slide in detail. You can look at it afterwards and get back to me if you have any question. But this shows that to work with this instrument of legal cases, you actually have to take you need a long breath. So this is the example from Munich. The first 2 points are related to a case by a private person that we supported as DUH with regard to PM10. But in early 2012, we started our own case with regard to the NO2 limit value, and we said Munich needs a new air quality plan that actually addresses this problem. And we have a binding decision since 2014, but we still don't see the implementation of the measures that are needed. So the last thing that we now are waiting for is a question that the highest court of Bavaria sent to the European Court of Justice, if beside the means that they have from administrative legislation, is there also the possibility to take those people to jail who are responsible for the implementation in case the various decisions that are binding and that are on the table for many years now are not being followed. So it's not our aim to take any kind of environmental minister or whom else to jail, but obviously it's our aim that if we have court decision, we also want authorities to follow this decision, and not only private person. I mean, everybody of you would be stupid if you would not follow a court decision. But yeah, we want to make sure that this also counts for authorities. So in the course of the cases that we had, there were two cities, Stuttgart and Düsseldorf, where the judge on the local level decided that a diesel ban, a ban for diesel cars, for specific diesel cars, is feasible and legally an option, be it in specific streets or in a zone, in a low emission zone, for example, if no other mean can ensure compliance in the shortest time frame as possible. And the federal states, who were our defendant in the case, submitted a review to the highest administrative court to decide this specific question. Can we include a diesel ban in the air quality plan, yes or no? And the highest court confirmed the decisions and said, yes, it is feasible and it's appropriate, and it's demanded if no other mean is available. So all the decisions that we had after this highest court decisions, or the subsequent decisions on the local federal level, referred to that judgment. And as of today, we have 13 decisions that actually include diesel bans today. We expect more decisions to come. As I mentioned, it's 34 cases in total. But obviously, this has raised a huge debate in Germany. Maybe we can discuss that later. So it's there are supporters and non-supporters of that decision, but actually I think this is a strong movement, and we hope it will kick off the transition or speed up the transition that we need for many reasons in the sector. So it's now possible for the cities to introduce bans on specific road. This would be the left signal or street sign, and the right one would be for a low emission zone. We have more than 45 or so existing low emission zones in Germany already. So the question is now, can we find a way to improve them with specific regard to NO2. This is a short express that just added recently. So how does policy react? What is the debate currently in Germany? One thing that our federal government came up with is to change the legislation. As I mentioned, European legislation is binding for all member states. But the German and the highest administrative court decision is binding as well. But the government decided to change national legislation and to say that we only would need diesel bans and order that they are only appropriate above a concentration of NO2 from 50 micrograms in the annual mean, and not 40 micrograms, which is the official limit value. So in our view, this the change of legislation does not comply with European legislation. So that will not work, actually. That will not stand before court. So there are several public funds to improve public transport or to buy more electric drive buses, etc. But the funds are only reserved to some so-called intensive cities where you have extremely high concentration. So this, in our view, excludes measures with a broad effect, and we see high NO2 concentration even offside the official monitoring stations. There are a lot of measurements going on right now, also from citizen science initiatives, and they show that even in smaller cities you have high concentration, and so you need measures that would actually work even there. So the other idea is to challenge our charitable status, which is not the business of a political party or the government, but to fiscal authorities, to challenge our public funding, to challenge the correctness of the official measuring results. There have been some checks on the local level leading to the result that all the monitoring stations are placed correctly. And the other idea is to challenge the air quality standard itself. So is 40 microgram accurate or not? Is it too high, too low? Is it a number that has come by chance, or is it based on evidence and according science? And this luckily has been rejected by several scientists, but it's still, there are still some people out there that say that the standard is much too tough and that it needs to be changed. So what is our aim in this whole game? We want, I mean, you could say our organization is a lobby organization. That would be true in the sense that we lobby for better air quality and for effective measures to address climate change and to improve the quality of life in cities. But in this case, we actually only want that existing legislation is being complied with. And we want that the standards, also the exhaust emission standards for vehicles, for example, are not only achieved on paper or in the laboratory, but on the road. And this is why we ask for a better market surveillance. We think that without this story of legal cases that we have now, we will not see the current debate on future road transport in Germany, at least. We still have a lot to do with regard to reacting properly on the diesel scandal as a whole. So no penalty has been spoken out. There's no single consumer being had the chance to get some money back or to give his car back or whatsoever. There's no comparable legal mean to have class actions as you have in the US. So there's still a lot to do, and we think that, yeah, the debate on the diesel bans that we achieved with the legal cases is still one of the major drivers to actually make sure that this chapter has not been closed yet. We hope that this is a chance to kick off the transition towards a sustainable mobility, and I think cities are a good place to start this transition and to strengthen in a broad way, or in a much tighter way, collective transport systems, and also cycling, walking, etc., which actually needs to lead to less traffic in the end. So not only a change of technology or better exhaust cleaning, etc., but to have less cars in the cities. So we move step by step. I think a lot of cities are very interested in changing the mobility patterns in their hometown, and maybe have now more options to actually do that, and get more political support to do that. But there's still a lot to do to win the public opinion and to show that this change is feasible. And it would not only lead to better air quality, which is maybe a bit abstract for some people, but it would also lead to less noise, to more safety, to more space in the cities. Yeah, as I said, to a better quality of life. And yeah, not least, it can also be a major driver to address climate change. And so I hope that this comprehensive effect will actually take place, and this will be one of our main goals and fields of activities. in the future. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much for your interest, and yeah, happy to answer your questions if you have any. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dorothee, and that was really great. I think there were some questions already in between. I hope they've been clarified or resolved a little bit. There were questions about getting visuals, and I think you showed the visuals from the driving ban and the environmental zones. If there are more questions, of course, either on maybe explaining, understanding some of these maybe less known mechanisms in European and German legislation. And maybe if there are questions about the technical aspects of actually how this cheating worked, or how they found out about the cheating and how to measure this. And also maybe if there are questions about how to then take the next steps, please feel free and go ahead. And again, you can ask your questions either in the chat box. You can also use the questions pane, or you can raise your hand and we can then unmute you, so you can actually mention or ask your question yourself. You can also, if you don't have a question, you can also comment on something. If you want to compare this maybe to the situation in the United States or wherever else you're coming from, this is also highly welcome. We know, of course, that the situation is not totally comparable, but we know the same emissions problems exist in other countries as well. Of course, the diesel rate is really a European problem, more or less, but there have been, of course, other issues and discrepancies between the test cycle emissions and the real world driving emissions, of course. Of course, we all know there's one maybe simple solution to this is to not drive cars. But if we understand that currently there are cars on the road, I think it's a very important step to make these cars at the least environmentally harmful possible. And I think that's very important. Dorothee, you've recently got also a lot of heat in the German political landscape. I mean, not you personally, but the Deutsche Umwelthilfe. Was that mostly rhetoric or mostly words and hot air, or do you feel actually in a tighter situation right now?
Yes, I think the situation became a bit tighter. I mean, it's not that we are afraid of leaving the office and walking on the street and being recognized. But yes, two things I mentioned. The one is that the major political party decided to challenge our shareability status, which would actually be a big problem for us. And yeah, as I said, we are very happy that they are not the one to decide about that, but it's fiscal authority who just confirmed the status in August this year. So officially it's all fine. But I think it creates an area or a debate, or supports a debate where you see that a small NGO with only a few members that gets funding from several sources is accused to how do I say that? Yeah, maybe the other way around. So, as I said, what we are asking for is compliance with existing legislation, but in this area, addressing not only mobility in theory, but the mobility of each single diesel car owner in the cities creates a lot of irritation, and I think it's easy for for the political side to say that we as an NGO are the ones who actually cause the problem, where in the truth I think it's 10 years or even more of not reacting to the upcoming problem, that everybody could see that we have those high pollution concentration, and that no proper means have been implemented. So we could have started much earlier, but only now where we have the court decisions, concrete measures are discussed and implemented only right now. So yeah, I don't want to be too pessimistic, but I think we should be aware of the fact that it's important that civil society and NGOs can ask for such things as we do without being challenged in the way that we are challenged right now.
Good. Well, thank you so much. And of course, I hope that too. I hope that things will get better. And we all wish that. Of course, it's the time of the year also where we tend to be optimistic. So let's all be optimistic. And also, I mean, why else would we do the work if we wouldn't believe that change is possible? So I think it's great. It's also phenomenal work if you look, or you know the map by heart, but there's all these cities where you're active, and some of them have very bad air quality issues, and so that's really not a negligent issue. It's really about people's health. So it's really, I think people start to understand that. We have two questions, and I want to go first to the first one from Becky English, and I'll see if you can actually speak. I'll unmute you if you can speak. Otherwise, I'll read your question out loud. Becky, your microphone should be open now. Okay. And maybe not. So then I can read out the question. Just one moment. So it's the technical question. So if you can't answer it, that's fine too. It's about the EU. Does the EU require modeling on PM 2.5 before proposed highway projects are proceeded or permitted?
Good question. So we do have a limit value for PM 2.5 in the ambient air as well. And new highway projects need to have a so-called environmental screening in the course of the planning procedure. And I think I would say yes, that also the increase of air pollutants are part of this, let me say, environmental check. I would say it's only relevant if the highway or if the street passes areas where people live or work. So you actually would have people affected from the raise of PM 2.5 concentration deriving from transport of this new street or highway.
Okay.
Does this answer your question?
Well, since Becky is muted, she will have to type it in. There will be some delay, but I hope it was a good answer. I hope so. In the meantime, I unmute Yasmina Petrovic. Yasmina, if you can speak, you can ask your question now directly to Dorothee. Okay, well, otherwise, if you're not available, I can read this one out. I'll do my very best. Does Deutsche Umwelthilfe conduct public education and engagement activities? Having more people on your side might help fend off the political pressures.
Well, actually, we do a lot of public work. We have a lot of press releases and a very complex web page. If you are a bit bored, you can check our web page, and it's very full of information. But and we are invited more and more to public debates on site from local initiatives, from local politics, and we always try to go to these places and to discuss with people on site who are really affected. As I said, we only have few members, and we don't have local groups, so to speak, different from other NGOs in Germany who are very present on the local level. So we are not, but we also get a lot of questions per email. A lot of people write us an email, and we always try to answer with as soon as possible. And maybe what has broadened the support or even clarified what we do is that we already have started several measurement campaigns where we ask people to do the measurements for us. So we have passive tubes. It's a little plastic tube that you can fix near to the street or near to your house for a specific time, and you afterwards can see the NO2 concentration during the time period. And this works very well. And I think together with the request or with the invitation for people to do the measurements, we also provide them with information on the health effects of high air pollution, on the measures that can be done against that, and on the relevance. And so I think this is quite a good instrument to win people to not support us, but to support the idea of better air quality in the city.
And that's a very good link. There was another question. I'll pull this up front because it's not really a question. It's more a comment from Becky English again, who can't speak because she's not able to do that right now. But she says, please ask the wonderful German engineers to create some very high quality but inexpensive air quality monitors. So I think that is directly what you just said. We do have more questions. And now we have a question actually coming from one of our co-presenters. I hope Isabel can speak now. She said she had a question too.
Yeah, well, you know, the more I hear your presentation, the more I kind of have the feeling that if we were going to do something like that here in the United States, as soon as you hear the word ban, I think that people would try to do the absolute opposite. So my question is, you kind of answered part of that. How do you bring more support from people, and how do you avoid a backslash from your initiatives?
I think we do get support from people who are really annoyed of this situation, of the traffic situation that they see today in their city. Obviously, it's mostly people who cycle or who walk or who have children, and they say that they are very happy to see our activities. On the other hand, we totally understand. I mean, as Max said, obviously there's sometimes you don't have the choice to take the bike if you have to take a longer ride, or you have to transport something, or you're not able to cycle or whatsoever. So there are many good reasons to need a car from time to time. And so one other thing is that we have been asking for since early 2016, so only short time after the start of the so-called diesel scandal, is there is a technical thing that can be done. So I introduced you, or I presented you some results from the so-called software update, but there's also the option to do some hardware retrofits on the cars, as we used to do it with the particle filters. So you can also include or install proper NOx reduction technology in the vehicles, And our demand is that this must be done, and this must be paid by the manufacturers, at least for the newer cars, Euro 5, Euro 6. Yeah, starting from the point where everybody said this is absolutely nonsense, we do have some supporters for that, even from the official side, even from politics. And so the Ministry of Transport, who is responsible to create or to install the legal framework for this retrofit, announced to publish that by the end of the year, or at the latest early 2019. So we hope that the legal requirements will be published by then, and then manufacturers and suppliers can start to develop the systems and to bring them to the market. And I think that can be a solution for many car owners right now. And I think we would also support any kind of exemption for those cars who can be retrofitted and who will be retrofitted in the next month. And so then obviously will be excluded from any driving ban in the city.
Very good. Dorothee, you mentioned the problem that not every car trip can be maybe avoided right now, and we have questions going into that more general issue of sustainable mobility. And I unmute now Martin Völker. Martin, if you can speak, you can ask your question now yourself. If you're not in an environment where it's quiet enough, or you don't, yeah, I can also read it out. It's a question about the first mile problem, whether Germany has new innovative ways of solving this problem for the last mile.
Yeah, when you think of the last mile for good transportation, there are some projects here right now to do that with electric mobility. I think that at least the German car makers are a bit behind when it comes to offering concrete solutions. We also promoted in a way CNG, so natural gas, as a technology that is available right now, and that is at least okay from the air quality perspective, even though it's a fossil fuel, obviously. And with regard to the last mile, I think the challenge is to improve. I mean, we see that in some cities already now, where you can have a mixture of public transport, car sharing, bike sharing. You have electric scooter systems that you can rent for a short term. This needs to be improved and simplified, so you have maybe one mobility card and can use all the systems all around. And obviously it has to be installed not only in cities like Berlin, Hamburg, and Cologne, but all over the country, and especially in the outskirts, where people, also in Germany, people tend more and more to live outside the city or at the edge of the city, and to work in the city, and to have a possibility for those people to get to work without using their own car in the future. So it's obviously it's also our duty or our challenge for us to come up with new ideas on such solutions.
And that's a question now, leads directly to a question from Brent Nelson, who asks about you. What is your vision for transportation in cities 25 years from now?
I think it's a mix of several transport modes that still includes car, but low to zero emission cars. I think a lot of my colleagues would highlight electric mobility or battery-driven cars as the solution, but I think this can only be a solution if we have effective efficiency standards for this technology, which we don't have right now, and it's not cannot be the solution to remove a combustion engine from a Porsche Cayenne and put in some batteries. That's not the goal. But my vision would also include maybe half or a third of the numbers of cars that we see in cities today. So a clear reduction of cars is one of the major pillars, and a very much stronger and comfortable safety or safe public transport.
Very good.
I mean, we always only talk about people getting from A to B and not about the goods being transported from A to B. I think this is another challenge that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Coming back to your point about electric mobility, there is a comment question again by Martin Völker, who is a German but lives in Golden, Colorado, and so he has this transatlantic perspective on things. And he had the impression in Germany that in Germany there's this resistance against Tesla, and people are, he says, even like a negative perceptions, negative press about Tesla and how this can be, and why there's this kind of hateful resistance against Tesla in Germany.
I would not say it's hateful. I mean, maybe people talk a bit with the distance because obviously Tesla is quite expensive. And maybe it's a bit, yeah, but that's only my personal view. Maybe it's a bit combined with a kind of shame because, German car manufacturers are not, let me say, leading the tour with regard to electric vehicles. We have BMW with some models, but it's very difficult to actually get such a vehicle because you have to wait for a long time. And I think French manufacturers, Tesla, they are all ahead. And there's always this big thread of Chinese car makers that would enter the European market. And I think there's a huge uncertainty about the future of German car industry as a whole that we just see quite recently when the European Parliament and the member states decided or came up with a compromise on the future CO2 limit values for passenger cars. So the first thing that German car makers said to the press was that those goals are way too ambitious and that they are very afraid of future economic situation in this sector, etc., etc. So they don't give people the security or the feeling that this highly industrialized and very technological sector is ready for the future, and that it can be how do I say erschrecken can be scared or so by future limit values on the one hand and small NGOs like UH on the other.
Yes, it is really a little bit the David Goliath idea. If you look at the budgets, right? I mean, we're talking about real big players there, and there's also a question coming back to the diesel scandal, and there's a question from Becky English, so I'll read that out again. So did Deutsche Umwelthilfe suspect anything about VW and the other manufacturers about their diesel vehicles before the scandal broke? Did you have that suspicion?
Yes, we did, but not only us. Our federal environmental agency, they did some tests in the past years that would at least show that the emission on the streets were higher than the limit values. So they showed the effects, more or less. And they published their results, obviously. And so for many years, it's a common procedure that if you, for example, have such an environmental assessment when you build a new road, that was one of the questions with regard to PM 2.5, but you also had according numbers for nitrogen oxides that have always been above the true exhaust limit value. So authorities knew that they need to calculate or model future air quality situation not based on the limit value, but based on the real world emission factor. This is one aspect, and the other one is that we had a kind of informal information on some emission tests in the laboratory that showed some interesting results. Let me say that. It's a bit technical. For example, if you see higher NOx emission from the warm engine than from the cold, this is technically does not make any sense. And our fear was that this is based on such an illegal defeat device that then has been found with Volkswagen. And this was 2011. And we presented that to the Ministry of Transport, and they said, yeah, well, the test procedure is so weak and we cannot do anything. And we never heard of them again. So this whole story could have been avoided if authorities actually would have reacted earlier. They knew before, but they did not react.
It's really shocking because they're there to protect the public, of course, not to protect the companies in the first place. And I hope that there will be changes not only with the car manufacturers, but also with the regulators, that they do a better job maybe in the future. I think our time is almost up. We have maybe time for one small last question, coming again from Becky English. She asked actually where she can get these plastic tube monitors, the cheap ones you mentioned. Are they available online, or do you know where to get them?
Maybe you can ask her just to send me an email, or everybody who's interested in that. We get them from the Switzerland, but I will check with my colleagues if there are manufacturers maybe in the US. Otherwise, I'm happy to send her some via mail.
Excellent. Very good. So Becky, either contact Dorothee directly. You can see the email here on the last slide, or you can also reach out to us. I want to say thank you again. I want to say thank you to Dorothee, of course, for answering all these different questions coming in on all aspects of mobility, and it's of course it's a complex issue. I think in the US now it's the #1 emission source, and still rising, and also in Europe it's a significant emission source. And of course, the more we have green energy for electricity, the more transport becomes the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, pollutant emissions are a real issue, not only in the countries such OECD countries such as the United States or in European countries, but also in countries with lower income levels, where sometimes air pollution is even more severe. So I think this topic will be on the agenda in the coming years too. I want to also thank, of course, the Alliance Center for co-hosting this with us. Thank you, Isabel, and for presenting the Alliance Center. Dorothee and everybody, I wish you happy holidays, and of course some quiet time, sustainable mobility for the holidays, and clean air for all. And of course, a green Happy New Year 2019. I hope we can meet then again, and feel free to reach out with more questions. Take care and see you soon in just a few weeks with the next webinars. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thanks so much.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.